Was it an RPG? Watch Dogs 2. Watch Dogs 2 is not advertised or labeled as an RPG. At least it wasn't when I looked it up a little bit ago. It was just labeled action adventure. Ah, Typhoon, what are you doing? My rabbit was suddenly got near my wires. I was like, it's freaked out a little bit. Um, okay, so Watch Dogs 2 is labeled as an action adventure game. It's not labeled as an action RPG or action adventure RPG, at least from what I looked up. So again, if this game is not labeled as an RPG, then why am I even making a video about it? About if it's an RPG. Is it actually secretly an RPG? I'll tell you right now, no. It's not secretly actually an RPG. It is what it says it is. It is just an action adventure, fun, cool game that I really enjoyed, by the way. Not that I needed to mention that. Um, so, what makes this different from an action RPG? Well, if you think of an action RPG, such as Dragon's Dogma or Dark Souls, or not Dark Souls, or Elden Ring, Dark Souls is not an RPG, by the way. If you haven't seen that video, I've made that video why it's not an RPG. But Elden Ring is an RPG. So, how is this different from an action RPG such as Elden Ring or Dragon's Dogma? Well, besides the fact that you create a character like you do in Dragon's Dogma and Elden Ring, which you also do in Dark Souls, which isn't an RPG, besides the fact that you don't create a character, um, well, I got to say that that's probably pretty much the main difference between what makes this an RPG and not an RPG. Um, because the point is that even though you can go around, do whatever you want, interact with whoever you want, you're not role playing. You, as the player, are not role playing. You're just controlling a character who, you know, they have their own narrative, their own desires, and their own interactions. They interact with people the way they want to. You can make the character go do stuff with people, and you can even try to role play as the character if you want to, like yourself. Um, but the character, they have their own lines, they have their own dialogue, they have their own movements, they have all their own stuff. They're not an avatar of you. So it's really not even trying to be an RPG. It's not even trying to give you role playing. It's just giving you a character to control in an open world game. And so you can adventure and you can get into a lot of action, um, shooting, fighting, and you can do a lot more than that too. Um, but when it comes down to it, you're not role playing. You as the player don't have the agency or choices in the world to interact with the world. The character himself, he has all that power, all that agency. When you go and talk to a character, he talks the way he wants to talk. Um, when you use your weapons and stuff, he kind of uses the weapons the way he wants to. I mean, you tell him where to point and shoot, and then when to attack and stuff. But other than that, like it's all him. It's his personality. It's his way of interacting with the world, and that is really the only difference that makes it not an RPG. It makes it just an action adventure game. And if you contrast that with Elden Ring, when you play Elden Ring, you create a character and you are put into a world where you, the player, even though you're playing in third person, that character is still your avatar. You pick their voice and stuff, and then you go and interact with the world the way you want to, not the way the character wants to. Um, the character doesn't. There's a narrative in Elden Ring, but the character themselves, it's not like their narrative that they are personally involved in, right? It's you as the player, it's your narrative to tackle how you want to. Because the character is really like just there to bridge the player to the world. And this character does that. You know, when you play as a character like in this game or in Dark Souls, that character is there to bridge the player to the world, but the character stands on their own. Like they are their own character. And in Dark Souls, you do make your own character, so it is closer to being role playing. But the fact of the matter is, the narrative is so constrained that there's no agency or choices. You don't go wherever you want. You don't do whatever you want. Even though you kind of do, like you can explore and take the puzzle on the way you want to, but it's like the game is like a it's like a big more like a big action puzzle, right? And you're just figuring out the puzzle, how to do the main narrative. And there really isn't any real side quests or anything. It's not really open ended. You don't go where you want, do what you want, and take on any quests or adventures you want. You're not really interacting with the world as the player, as the player, right? But in Elden Ring, you are kind of interacting with the world as the player. And in this game, in Watch Dogs 2, you're not interacting with the world as the player. You are interacting with the world controlling. Well, you're not really interacting with the world. And that's what I'm kind of trying to say is you're not really interacting with the world as the player. The character is interacting with the world and you're guiding them through it. You're guiding them and giving them commands and orders on how to interact with the world. So you're not role playing. And that's how it is in Dark Souls. Um, you're just telling the character what to do. You as the player aren't really interacting with the world, and you're not just being bridged to the world. You're just kind of telling, even though you created the character has the narrative is so confined that it is not role playing at that point. It is just fulfilling, because when you're role playing, you're not just like fulfilling a prophecy. You know what I mean? Like you can play the character who's trying to fulfill a prophecy if you want to, or you cannot. But in Dark Souls, you can't really do that. You either are fulfilling the prophecy or you're dead. You know what I mean? And in Elden Ring, that changes. You can choose to fulfill the prophecy or not. And there's other things that can happen and do. Okay, so I just use those two games as like action games to compare and contrast to point out this game is not considered an RPG. Dark Souls is labeled an RPG, but it's not an RPG. Elden Ring is labeled an RPG, and it is an RPG. This game is not labeled an RPG, and it is not an RPG. And I hope that I have elaborated on the reasons why that is in a way that brings some light and clarity to the understanding of what a role playing game really is. Because a role playing game is not a game where you just play a character that has a role. It's a game where you're actually role playing. You, the player yourself, have to actually be the one role playing for it to be a role playing game.